We're once again talking about Syria. Though Tuesday deadline has expired, the UN and Arab League Special Representative Kofi Annan still does not give up hope that his peace plan could work. However, the Syrian issue is obviously entering into a critical stage. So, what is the current stance of the parties involved, and what are the options still left on the table? We've been discussing it with our guest speakers Eyal Zisser, professor in the Department of Middle Eastern and African History of the Tel Aviv University, and Vyacheslav Matuzov, Russian veteran diplomat and president of the Russian Society for the Promotion of Friendship and Business Ties with Arab countries. As Syrian issue is approaching a critical point, passions have been running high. Mr. Annan has insisted that his peace plan was still viable. The plan has not been implemented according to the schedule that we laid out, but it does not mean that it cannot be implemented, he said. We still have time between now and the 12th to stop the violence, and I appeal to all concerned, the government in the first place and the opposition forces, he said. At the same time, the Free Syrian Army, which is a rebel force of mainly army defectors, warned it would resume attacks if the regime offensive did not stop. U.S. State Secretary Hillary Clinton criticized Russia, saying that its stance on Syria in the UN Security Council allows Bashar al-Assad to remain in power and continue atrocities against its own people. However, U.S. Senators John McCain and Joseph Lieberman have openly urged to start immediately arming the opposition to change the military balance of forces on the ground. Mrs. Clinton was making similar claims. So, is Mr. Annan's plan really viable? Now we're joined by our guest speaker, Eyal Zisser. And just to remind you, he's professor in the Department of Middle Eastern and African History at the Tel Aviv University.
I think that we can expect some limited moves on both sides, because everyone is interested in, some sort of a show. To show that some efforts are being made and, there is some limited progress, but it will not last. It will not last. The bloodshed will continue, the conflict will continue, it's not realistic to expect this shaky, ceasefire to hold. As far as the regime is concerned, the only solution he sees is, by use of force. He cannot allow, a real ceasefire, because the problem is losing control, not because of the armed gang, but because the demonstrators, if he leaves Homs, the population will turn against him. He will lose control over the city. He will lose control over important regions of Syria. This will be rigid for, international intervention. He can't allow himself, to be dragged to such a cycle. But at the same time, he needs the Russians. He wants to avoid or to prevent any international moves against Syria. So he's ready, They believe that the victory is behind the corner, that they need another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then, they will suppress the revolt. So in this sense, they need to buy time, and by showing goodwill, they buy time. Now, when we move to the other side, to the Western powers, to the United States, they do understand that at one point there will be a need for more severe actions against the regime, but they need legitimacy. They want to persuade Russia. So they too are interested in, showing that they made an effort, that they offer Bashar ceasefire, and that they try to reach a peaceful solution. But they know it will not happen, and they are already preparing the next step. Okay, so
which would be the next step?
They're not eager to intervene directly, but giving money and weapon to the, to the rebels. This might be, a possible move.
Dr. Zisser, I have an impression that neither party is interested in stopping the bloodshed. So is there any international force which is looking at stopping the bloodshed?
No, I mean, it is in the hands of the Syrian, there is a strong regime, enjoy some support, there is strong opposition. I mean, the opposition as an institution is not as strong, but you can see that the resentment, the protest is deeply rooted, okay? So the protest is very popular, is widespread, is deep. Is very deep. So you see, in such a deadlock, it's very problematic, to find an end. It's a zero for both sides. It's a zero game.
So zero game. And when you're saying a deadlock, are you saying that the situation is not going to be resolved in any favorable way? Is my understanding?
No, I can't see it. I can't see it because for the opposition, it's not an option to have Bashar in power. For the regime, it's not only Bashar; it's the Alawite community, it's the system. It's not an option, to give up. So how can be a peaceful solution? There were countries where eventually, like in Yemen, the president was convinced to leave, but Syria is different.
Well, Professor, thank you so much. And just to remind you, our guest speaker was Eyal Zisser, professor in the Department of Middle Eastern and African History at the Tel Aviv University.
Burning Point.
We're now talking about what could be the next step in the situation around Syria. So, Yuri, this was the viewpoint of the closest neighbor of Syria, which is Israel. And as far as I understand, the sentiment in Israel is extremely pessimistic.
Yes, they have grounds. I'm afraid.
That was my question. What is the most peculiar feature about this situation for you?
I think that time runs out.
Well, we've been hearing this for almost 8 months.
But even our foreign minister Lavrov sounds more and more pessimistic. Although he said, "Well, let's hope." At the same time, yesterday, meeting the Syrian foreign minister, Mr. Lavrov said that. Well, yes, of course, the United States and other countries which have direct access to Syrian opposition groups would do better not to constantly blame Russia and China. They should use their levers in order to honestly force everyone to stop shooting each other. But at the same time, he said that the Syrian government should also make more efforts.
No one actually
indirectly criticizing
spells it out. What should the Syrian government do? I'm honestly trying to understand the positions of the parties. Now, the position of the opposition is quite clear. They just want Assad out at any cost.
Yes.
But now, what can the Syrian government do in this situation if there are still armed groups operating in larger cities of the country? Can it practically pull its military out of those cities?
Of course not.
Which is a deadlock.
Maybe to fire their tanks and guns not so often. Maybe not to pursue refugees or even members of the armed groups crossing borders of, say, Turkey and firing at Turkey, because when a man was killed yesterday in Turkey by the Syrians, and so the Turkish leader cut short his visit to China and said very harsh words that somebody will be made responsible for that. Maybe some military people. I'm sure that it wasn't direct order by President Assad, but some military leaders should show more restraint.
But as far as I understand it is extremely difficult to tell who is who to the governmental force and who belongs to the opposition. I think this is the one of the most awful things in civil war.
Yeah, sure, but still, both sides should understand that it's a very touchy situation.
But the opposition is not willing to talk. Perhaps I was not attentive enough, but I have not seen any piece of criticism directed at the Syrian opposition. On the other hand, there's been a recent report that, just let me quote it, John McCain and Joseph Lieberman made an unannounced visit to the area of the Turkish-Syrian border. U.S. policymakers urged to start immediately arming the opposition to change the military balance of forces on the ground. In fact, when I was asking Professor Zisser about whether there is any force wishing to stop the bloodshed, I didn't get an answer.
Well, the United Nations. We still have to use all the chances. We should do what Mr. Lavrov proposed yesterday, to send UN observers who are actually being stationed in the Golan Heights. It will take a very short time to bring them. There are several options actually for international involvement. for real international involvement. And one of them is that peacekeeping force.
Yuri, but could you perhaps expand a little bit on the options which still remain?
I just read a very interesting story in the Foreign Policy magazine, authored by Mr. Bruce Jones, a director of the Managing Global Order program at Brookings. Mm-hmm. So he mentions three options. The first is using force to achieve regime change. He means that United States, NATO, Turkey, or anyone else will start a full-blown intervention. Mm-hmm. Although he mentions that the White House has reportedly signaled to the Syrian opposition that it is not prepared to escalate the conflict with the Assad regime. Then comes the second option. Mm-hmm. Second option is arming the rebels. Mm-hmm. The so-called neo-Mujahideen strategy. Mujahideen strategy was used during the Afghan war between Soviet Union and Afghanistan. So giving more arms, giving more money to the anti-regime forces, and but this is very dangerous, he says, because there should be no doubting that it carries the danger of major escalation and sectarian clashes between the opposition. Just what you said, that the opposition is so divided. And the third option, which sounds to him more plausible, is multinational stabilization force. That it's neither an intervention nor a peacekeeping tool. It has military capacity, but the intentions of the peacekeepers. It doesn't aim for regime change, but to stop a particular bout of killing. Who could be the core of this force? The Turks.
The Turks?
Yes.
Well, this is very interesting, and this is something we're going to discuss with our expert.
This is the Voice of Russia.
This is Burning Point, looking at options still available in the Syrian case. So now we're joined by Vyacheslav Matuzov, Russian veteran diplomat and president of the Russian Society for the Promotion of Friendship and Business Ties with Arab countries.
I don't think that Turkish army can be a productive idea, because Turkey is a part of conflict. It is not neutral countries. Any Turkish military presence on Syrian soil today, when Turkey became a stronghold of Syrian opposition army and training camps for this army allocated in Turkey, I don't think that Turkey can be accepted by any side of the conflict from other side that as a partner in regulation. My opinion is to support a Russian suggestion to deploy in hot points of Syria, spots of Syria, international observers. They are now located in Golan Heights, because Golan Heights, it is absolutely clear now, is a part, it is not disturbed very much by Israeli and Syrian guards of the frontier. And now they are very easily can be relocated to other places of Syria. They have necessary equipment, necessary training, necessary permissions from Syrian government. I think it is the best choice, any other choice, to bring Turkish army, some other armies in Arab world like Qatari. They recovered the idea to impose solutions of this issue on the base of demands of opposition leaders. In other words, demands of the United States administration.
And how viable is Mr. Annan's plan?
Kofi Annan mission met with great difficulties. Great difficulties that were awaited because Kofi Annan, from the beginning of his mission, declared absolutely openly that obstacles on his way to success of his mission is great, and he asked international community to help him, not to intervene in the way that endanger his mission, But on the contrary, he asked international community to support his mission. And now we watch the events in the Middle East arena and on Syria scene, and we can conclude that Kofi Annan's conclusion was absolutely correct. Difficulties are great. It is obvious because behind opposition we notice and very perfectly the configuration of American foreign policy. It is not incidentally that all oppositional leaders are located in Paris, in Washington, and in Turkey, in Istanbul, because all organizational centers that are supporting opposition leaders in reality, it is the United States administration, it is Barack Obama administration, and the American presence here is absolutely clear. It is clear from WikiLeaks because telegrams sent to Washington by Ambassador Ford from Damascus to State Department absolutely clear showed what kind of job was made by American embassy in Syria to organize all oppositional forces.
Well, just to remind you, our guest speaker is Vyacheslav Motuzov, president of the Russian Society for the Promotion of Friendship and Business Ties with Arab countries. This is Burning Point, looking at options still available in the Syrian case.
The main point in his telegrams was that American ambassador concluded that driving forces of Syrian oppositions are Islamic Brotherhood. And all of them are located in Syria, inside the country, and only small groups spread it in different countries outside Syria. They don't have a real influence on the situation inside the country. So I think that when we are speaking about the conflict of interests between government and anti-government forces, we can conclude that in reality, anti-government forces are so kind of persistence in their position because they feel a full support, unlimited support from the United States administration. And this position is based in its turn on not giving the government the chance to be accepted as a legitimate authority, and that the authority that enjoy some kind of sovereign state and representing sovereign state, and this situation is based on international law, on acknowledged as Syria is a member of United Nations organization and the member of world community. I think that ignoring international law, ignoring the Charter of the United Nations that prohibited interference in political interference in internal affairs of any independent state, and military intervention, especially all aggressive intentions towards countries is prohibited according to the Charter of the United Nations. It occurred to be that United States, after dissolving Soviet Union, considered itself to be a unique center that can have the right to give chances for that government or this government to be ruling force in the country and granting them the permission to stay as an authority in this country or that country. I think it is a violation not only old international law, but it is absolutely obvious efforts of the United States policy to formulate a new vision for new international order, for new world order that dominated by the White House and Washington decisions. And I think that in Syria, absolutely clear today, this conflict that met Kofi Annan, it is not a local meaning. It is not on something small issues that Kofi Annan is capable to overcome. It is not collision between opposition and Syrian authority. It is more serious questions is put on agenda. It is question the future of international law, international order for 21st century. If it will be granted to the United States and their allies in Europe, in Arab world, in Islamic world, to nominate leaders of different countries according to their principles, to their vision, to their views, to their political positions, that means that the Security Council of the United Nations as organization will be ruled out of taking decision on hot international issue as what decided previously.
Well, just to remind you, our guest speaker is Vyacheslav Motuzov, president of the Russian Society for the Promotion of Friendship and Business Ties with Arab countries.
I think that difficulties that met Kofi Annan in his mission are originated from the deep and very strategic points that consisted of American geopolitical goals, American geopolicy, American foreign policy nowadays. They don't want to change their attitude. They don't want to make it more comfortable for people of this country because using a huge machine, huge apparatus of informatical resources, political technologies, internet, Sputnik TVs, all modern means of communication, they consider that they can provide their picture of the events, not a real picture. When Kofi Annan and Russian Federation suggest to send to Syria an international observers that can give some conclusions of what it is on reality is going on in Syrian cities. If there are some violations of law from side of opposition, we will notice that the United States prohibited such kind of activity of international observers. We met with this case when it was sent a group of observers from League of Arab States last year, when only 1 month was enough. When they gave a first report on their activity, they were taken some measures to prohibit existence of this group of Arab observers of Syrian events. I think that Kofi Annan met collisions with, not with Syrian government, not with Syrian position, in spite of all he says. But he, in reality, he met a strong American intention to dominate, to dictate their policy to all world community, including Russian Federation. I think that it is a deadlock that we are watching today in Syria, connected with Kofi Annan's mission. It reflects the good appetite for American State Department, who is trying to impose their positions to Russia Federation, to Chinese Republic, to Islamic world, to Arab world.
Sir, thank you very much. And just to remind you, this time our guest speaker was Vyacheslav Motuzov, Russian veteran diplomat and president of the Russian Society for the Promotion of Friendship and Business Ties with Arab countries. And